Seems okay. It's working, thankfully. So, uh, yeah, it's done. So, finally, we're there. So, you may kindly mute your videos or you can keep it on, no problem. So, we were doing the verse number 27, if you remember. We are discussing what is called Panchakarana. And what is the need for doing Panchakarana? Because we have already discussed how the Pancha Mahabhutas, and then when the process of creation starts, we have already discussed about the subtle body or the sukshma sarira, and the sukshma sarira that we have at the individual level is constituted by what? You have manas, buddhi, and then you have pancha jnanendriyas, pancha karmendriyas, and pancha pranas. That is how our sukshma sarira or the subtle body is constituted. And then we need to now talk about the Sthula Sarira. Sukshma Sarira, Karana Sarira, we first talked about it during the deep sleep state. That is the Anandamaya Kosha. We will do Pancha Kosha Viveka going forward. We first dealt with the Linga Sarira, and why is this subtle body referred to as Linga Sarira? That also we discussed. Because it gives us an indicator of the presence of that Chaitanya or Atma. So it shows what is otherwise hidden. That self or that Chaitanya is otherwise not visible, but because there is a Sukshma Sarira, that is evidence that there has to be one Atma in all of us. How else you have a subtle body? What travels after our death? What dreams when we are in sleep? We are in the dream state. It creates. So that is called Taijasa at the individual level. At the level of the collective, it's called Hiranyagarbha. Tejasa here, Hiranyagarbha there. That is the creative self and who creates things. Like in dream, we create a lot of things. We imagine the Hiranyagarbha is able to create the samsara at the collective level. So it's the Sukshma Sarira of Ishvara. Ishvara is the Karana Sarira, and Sukshma Sarira at the level of subtlety, it's called Hiranyagarbha. We discussed about it. And then we have to make sense of the visible reality. If jivas are created and we have Sukshma Sariras, it's obvious that if jivatmas are there, they would need to have something to relate to. If something is given to us, there has to be some subject matter with which the student will relate. There has to be a subject for a student. Similarly, for jiva, there has to be some bhogya. Bhogya is the subject matter with which it will relate. It could be food, it could be air, it could be light, everything. That means the material, the gross material reality. And how that happens, that is explained through a concept. Remember, this is essentially a heuristic tool. It is a concept, and this concept has no ultimate validity. These are explanatory tools used to make sense of whatever is available to our five senses. This whole gross reality, how do we make sense of it? And they are trying to explain it to us by taking recourse to this concept of Panchakarana. The fivefold division, how does that happen? So the storyline is like this, that you have Pancha Mahabhutas or the Sukshma Bhutas. What are these? Akasha, Vayu, Teja, and Jala or Rasha, and then Prithvi Tattva. And these five Tanmatras are the Mahabhutas. Just imagine these are five boys, five children. Each of them are carrying 8 fruits with them. Okay, I'm telling you Panchakarana as we discussed it. In the verse number 27, we said, Vidha vidhaya chaikekam chaturdha prathamam punaha swasvetara dvitiyangshair Yojanat Pancha Panchate. How do they become Panchikrita? This is how that happens. You have these 5 candidates. Akasha is one boy's name, the other boy's name is Vayu, then Rasha is one boy's name, then you have Vayu, and then Jala, and then you have these the Teja. Teja is the third guy, fourth guy is called Rasha, and fifth guy is called Prithvi. Right? These are the 5 guys. Each of them have 5 fruits each. The Akasha, let's imagine, has something subtle. Let's imagine it has coconuts, 8 coconuts it has. And then the Vayu has mangoes. It has 8 mangoes. Then Teja, let's imagine, is pumpkin. It has, or forget about it. Let's say oranges. Teja has oranges, so 8 oranges. And Jala, let's imagine that it will have water gourds. So it will have 8 of them. Or let's say lemons. So it has 8 lemons. And Prithvi Tattva. So the Prithvi Tattva, let's imagine it has something like what? So it has sweet potatoes. So it has, or say plums. It has plums. So 8 plums it has. So Akasha will keep 4 coconuts with itself and distribute 1 coconut each to other 4. Similarly, the Vayu, which has mangoes, will keep 4 mangoes with itself and distribute other 4 mangoes to the other boys. Similarly, everybody will distribute. Akasha will have 4 coconuts, 1 mango, 1 orange, 1 lemon, and 1 plum. Same way, each of them, like Vayu is mango specific, right? So it will have 4 mangoes, then 1 fruit each from other 4. That means Akasha will have 50% Akasha and 12.5% of Vayu, 12.5% of Teja, of fire, 12.5% of water, and 12.5% of Prithvi, or earth. Same way, each Mahabhuta will have 50% of his own and then 12.5% of the other 4 Mahabhutas. Together, they are Panchakrita. They become Sthula. That means available to the senses. That is so simple as that. Once you have that, once that has happened, will make progress to the next level. What happens? It's explaining in the next level. Evam panchikaranam avidhaya tehi bhutehi utpadyam karya vargam darshayati. So panchakarana is explaining, right? Now, when we are talking about Panchakarana, we are talking about the Panchabhutas or the Sthula Bhutas, which explains this whole material reality to us. What about the individual beings? Plants and devatas and jakshas and celestial beings, human beings, animals, birds, plants. We are all living beings in some sense or the other. How do we explain how we came into being? These are the Karya Vargas. We are the product line of God. There are different formulations of our Papa Punyas. Depending on how much Punya we have or how much Papa we have, God gives us certain level of intelligence, certain level of creativity, certain ethical attitude, and some physical frame. This physical frame can be celestial, could be divine, could be semi-divine, or it could be human or less human, subhuman, animal, birds, plants, anything. That is what is being explained in the verse number 28. Te andastatra bhuvanam bhogya bhogasrayodbhavaha hiranyagarbhastulesmin dehe vaishvanaro bhavet. Now, one correction, when it is written as bhavet, so you have one great scholar who in the footnote mentions that ideally this bediling is about future and we're talking about what has happened, and therefore it may be more apt to say Vaishvanaro Bhavata, means Abhavat, it happened. Makes no difference, we know what it means. Then he goes and then he kills a person. You can talk about it in a story when you're talking about past. We know that in literature these things can happen. So whether it is bhavat, abhavat, or bhaved makes no difference to us so far our grasp of the central meaning of this particular verse is concerned. So what is being conveyed to us? Tehi andaha tatra bhuvanam. Tehi means tejasehi, the sukshma sarirehi. We have the subtle bodies, all the jivatmas, right? And anda means that Brahmanda, this whole material, gross physical universe. Tatra bhuvanam. And this bhuvana is Chauda bhuvan. You have 7 lokas above and 7 lokas below. There's a lot of discussion in the scriptures. So you have bhuhu, bhur loka, where we humans, animals, plants, all of us live. And bhuvaha. Then you have the bhuvaha is the antariksha or the astral plane. It's between sun and earth, in between, bhuvaha. And swar is swarga loka, where you enjoy different kinds of specialities. If you do a lot of punyas, you go there. This is the celestial realm of very subtle pleasures or experience of happiness, swarga loka. And similarly, if you go further, swaha, then maha, maharloka. What is this mahatloka? You have these great spiritual beings who would be doing their maharshis, right? Great saints. They will dwell at that plane after they have abandoned this physical frame. Bhur, bhuvaha, swaha, maha, then janaha. And janaha is where the celestial entities are living. Okay? Sanaka, Sanandana, all these celestial beings, they live at that level. And then tapas, the highest austerities, people even beyond that, they are meditating there. Then tapas, then satyam. Satyam is the brahmaloka. That is the ultimate level of a very subtle level of manifestation, where Prajapati Brahma himself dwells. That is the brahmaloka. Whatever wish you have is in no time. It's a domain of not pleasure. It's a domain of fulfillment. Then why go beyond that? No, this is brahmaloka is always glorified as the ultimate domain, because beyond that is actually moksha, a liberation. There is no more layer of existence. You're absolutely one with Brahman. You're no different from Brahman beyond the Satya Loka. And you'll go down. So you have Atala, then Bitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, Patala, 7 lokas below. Atala is kind of a delusional realm of existence, just below the Bhuloka where we are living. These are not physical levels of existence. These are symbolic. These symbolic layers of existence are mentioned so that we can make sense of levels at which our human consciousness can ascend or descend. That's how my personal opinion is, and we can make sense of it in that way. That would be useful. And in Bitala, it's a kind of a domain of Lord Shiva. Okay. And then you have Sutala, where you have that domain. Bali was pushed to Patala, to a level which is much below the earth level. That was granted to Bali Raja by Bhagwan in Vaman Avatar. And below that you have Talatala. And Talatala is kind of ruled by the demon architects. I mean, these are definitely some levels of consciousness, but they're demonic. And then you have Mahatala, where you have the serpents who live there. You can call it serpent, not physically. Serpents are there on earth, but we are talking about some kind of subtle level of existence. And then you have Rasatala, where you have the Daityas and the Danavas. Who are Daityas and who are Danavas? You have this Devasura, Devasura Sangrama. Daityas and Adityas are supposed to be born to same father, Kashyapa. Daityas are born to one wife called Diti, and Adityas are born to the other wife called Aditi. Danavas are born to a wife called Danu. These are Danavas, right? And so essentially, there are a lot of these leftist interpretations these days will say that the Asuras are like proletariat and they're the working class exploited by the Devatas. And so, no, but actually, it's about not a physical fight between two contradictory or contrasting forces at loggerheads with each other. These are two aspects of our own consciousness, because Devasura Sangrama is dealt with in the Upanishads. They had a fight and they go to Brahmaji for a resolution, and he tells them that the. So he says, Damana, Dama for the gods or the celestial beings, because they have enormous powers, so they need to practice restraint. Otherwise, they'll mess it up. They'll create uncertainty in this whole moral universe. And so far, the Daityas or these demonic forces are concerned, they are very cruel. They have a lot of spiritual powers. They have the same father. They are half brothers. Daityas and Adityas are half brothers. They are born to the same father. However, they are advised to have daya or compassion, because they not only have a lot of powers, but they have magical powers. And they have a lot of cruelty, or they have what is called dvesha, or powerful aversion. And because of these powerful aversion in them towards others, they might try to torture others, harass others. So they're the dark forces in a way. Therefore, Brahmaji advises them. Remember, Brahmaji is grandfather of them as well. So he says, you need to practice compassion. That is the way you can maintain the balance in the moral universe. So far, we human beings are concerned, Brahmaji recognizes that we have a balanced attitude, but we are too miserly. We are very selfish. We may not be as cruel as the Danavas or the Daityas. We may not be as powerful, as lustful for divine pleasures as the Adityas, but we are selfish. We may not have a lot of powers, we may not have a lot of cruelty, but we are an extremely selfish class of, beings. And therefore, he advises us, dhanam, you need to have charity. A lot of people would say that charity is essentially a Christian concept. But if you look at the Upanishads, it says that human beings need to practice charity and love for others, ability to give and share, because otherwise they're going to get caught up in their own selfishness, own greed, and that's going to be their own unmaking. That will destroy them. So he advises. So you have the 7 levels of existence above and 7 levels of existence below. And together that is this 14 bhuvanas, levels of existence in this Brahmanda. Tej andaha tatra bhuvanam bhogya bhogasrayodha bhavaha. Bhogya is that domain of things which we consume, relate to for our pleasures, even for survival, like food, water, air, house, a bed, books to read, things to do. These are all bhogya varga. And bhogashraya is bhogayatanam, sariram. We need a physical frame. How do you enjoy anything without a physical frame? You need this body-mind complex. So that is the bhogashrayodbhavaha. That is how these are born. And then Hiranyagarbha stuleshmin dehe vaishvanaro bhavat. So he's talking about the collective level. What is going to happen to the collective self? Who was first Ishvara became Hiranyagarbha at the subtle level. That's Sukshma Sarira Bhimani. That identification with the Sukshma Sarira, when you have that identification, you are called Hiranyagarbha at the collective level. Because you are Samasti Bhimani. You are not identifying with one jiva, but all the jivas and their subtle bodies, right? So it's not about identification with water droplets. It's being the cloud from all these, from which all the droplets fall into the ocean, right? So it is the samasti abhimani devata, that is Hiranyagarbha. And here, now at the sthula level, then he's saying Hiranyagarbha, this subtle body, which is called the Hiranyagarbha, which is samasti abhimani devata, sthule asmini dehe. That means once this panchakarna has happened, you have the gross material universe. It's called Vaishwanara. Same Ishvara. When it's Karana Sarira, we call it Ishvara, and then it becomes Sukshma Sarira, we call it Hiranyagarbha, and then it becomes Sthula Sarira, it's called Vaishwanara or Virat. In the, Tasmad Virat Ajayata, if you look at the Purusha Sukta, it's mentioned there, Virat or Vaishwanara. So this whole physical universe, imagine, it's not about Earth, it's not about solar system. I'm talking about the whole gross, infinite multiverse, whatever. That divine force which identifies with this whole of it is called Vaishwanara. Right? So what are we? That is the collective, that is Vaishwanaras. And we are called Vishwa. Vishwa, and this is Jagrata Avastha. Vaishwanara again is Jagrata Avastha. Swapna Avastha is Hiranyagarbha. Swapna Avastha individually is called Taijasa. And deep sleep, Susupti Avastha for the individual is called Prajna. And that is called Ishvara in case of Samasti. So Ishvara, Hiranyagarbha, Vaishwanara, and you have Prajna, Taijasa, and a Vishwa. So far, we individuals are concerned. Let's look at how he's explaining word by word. Tehi panchikritehi bhutehi upadana karana bhutehi ando brahmanda utpadyate. Tehi, that means by that, all the Tejasa, Sukshma Sariras, by that, panchikritehi. So you have pancha mahabhutehi, which are Sukshma, by that, panchikritehi, bhutehi means mahabhutehi, Sukshma mahabhutehi, upadana karana bhutehi, and these Sukshma Pancha Mahabhutas are the material cause. Bhutehi Ando Brahmanda Utpadyate. Anda, that means here the Brahmanda, because it all emanates out of that supreme consciousness, the supreme source of all this. This Brahmanda Utpadyate, it materializes, manifests. Tatra, there, Brahmanda Antarbhuvanani Uparibhage. So you have certain levels of existence below and certain levels of existence above. Vartamana Bhumyadayaha. So you have this Bhur, Bhuva, Swa, Mahajana, Tapa, Satyam. All these Saptalokaha, Bhumehe, Adha, and then going down, Bhumehe, Stitani, Ataladini. You have this, you see, Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, Patala, starting with Atala. So he's saying this, that I described right now. Sapta Patalani, Patalantani, starting with Ataladini, starting with Atala, Patala, Sapta Patalantadini. That means ending with Patala, starting with Atala. Ataladini Sapta Patala Antani Teshucha Bhuvaneshu. We have these 14 levels of existence, Bhuvaneshu. Tehi Pranivihi. All these beings are there. At different levels, you have different levels of beings. Bhoktum Bhogyani Annadini. What are the Bhogya Padarthas? You need food, you need air, you need water. Annadini. Arna Adini. Arna would be anything that you are relating to, anything you consume. It's not about food. It's about this whole material reality around us, which enables our sustenance. We cannot sustain without breathing. We cannot sustain without sunlight. We cannot sustain without water. We need all this. We cannot sustain without having a place to sleep. And we cannot survive without having something to eat. So annadini tattata loka uchita sarirani. Now, if you want to go to space, can you go there like this? No, you need that special dress which will protect you, because you're going to a domain when there is no air, there's no gravitation. Now, in the Bhuloka, we are with these human beings, as animals, as birds, as plants. We have these Bhogyayatanas. These are the platforms for Bhogayatanas. These are the platforms for experiencing life, experiencing reality. You go higher up, the physical frame will become subtler and subtler. Therefore, he's saying Loka Uchita Sarirani, you need a body or a frame which is kind of concomitant, suitable for experience of that particular domain of existence. You cannot go to that domain of existence with this physical frame. So we'll be having subtler and subtler bodies when you are ascending different levels of existence. So te eva panchikritehi bhumehi iswara agyaya jayante. How do we all assume these physical frames? How do we take birth? How do you manifest and experience? So even the Nyaya Shastra say the same thing, Vedanta is also the same thing. They will always use the word called Ishvara Agyaya, with the grace of God, with the will of God. Here, you can have a transcendent God. Easily, that's what comes to your mind, that you'll have a transcendent God who sort of guides you. But there's another way of looking at it, that is the sum total of our good and bad deeds which get processed. And that is how we experience good and bad things in life. But Ishvara Agya is mentioned because God, even though he's transcendent, he is also immanent to witness all that we are doing, and then all these things that we do get processed, and then the karmic outcomes are further experienced by us. Ishvara Agya, we get different bodies, we get different results. Evam stula sarira utpatim avidaya, having explained this physical bodies that we get, somebody has got a very heavy muscular body, somebody has a very beautiful body, somebody is weak, somebody is very stout. So we have these differences in physical realm. Stula sarira utpatim avidaya teshu stula sarireshu abhimanavataha hiranya garvasya samasti rupasya vishwanara sangyakatvam. So we have these physical beings, and there is that being who identifies with all of us. The collective of this material universe is called Vaishwanara Sangyakatvam. Ekaika Stula Sarira Abhimanavatam Vyasti Rupanam. So we are all these individual beings, Taijasanam. Taijasa is that subtle bodies that all of us have. And the one who identifies with all of us, Vaishwanara Sangyakatvam Bhavati iti aha Hiranyagarva iti. So at the physical realm, that is called Vaishwanara or Virat. Asmin Stula Dehe Bhartate Bhartamanaha Hiranyagarva Vaishwanara Bhavet. And that is what which existence that in a collective material gross physical universe is called Vaishwanara. At the physical level, at the individual level, we are called Vishwa in the Jagrata Avastha. And then he is going to the next level. He's saying, Vyasti abhimaninam sangyang tad bhumyadikam cha darsayati tejasa iti tatra eva vartamanaha tejasa vishwa bhavanti. Now, as I was telling you, that what is called Vaishwanara at the collective level, that pure consciousness, is called Vaishwanara at the collective gross material physical universe level. What is it called at the individual level? He's saying that Taijasa Padartha, which is the Vyasti Sukshma Sarira, is called Taijasa. The collective Sukshma Sarira, subtle body, is called Hiranyagarbha. The collective gross physical body is called Vaishvanara. What is the micro level physical body called? That is called Vishwa. That is what is mentioning in the verse number 29. Vishwatam yata devatiryang naradayah te paragdarshinaha pratyak tattvabodha vivarjitaha. There are two things mentioned at the same time. One thing is the nomenclatural statement about what we are called at the physical level, at a micro level. And then why we are like this. That is explained in the second part of the sentence or the sloka, the couplet. Is beautiful, very mystical. Just look at it, what he's saying. Tejasa Vishwatam Jata. So all these Tejasas, that means these Sukshma saris that we have, what happens when we wake up? We are in the dream state. We have only this subtle body which is active. We are dreaming. Then we wake up. Then we connect with the physical universe. And when we connect with the physical universe, we are aware of our physical beings. Then Vishwatam Yata. Then you assume the title is Vishwa. You connect with the material universe around you, the tangible, the perceptible that you can relate to all around you. Vishwatam Jata. And then what kind of bodies you have? What is your Vishwata? What does it mean for us to be Vishwa? Then, depending on the sum total of our bad and good deeds, we will have the resultant body. Or that is what is the privilege or punishment that we have. And what is it? Deva means you have a Deva. Remember, now it's very clear. The Devatas are also Jivas. They are one class of beings, but remember, they are not eternal. You can be a Devata, an angelic body. It's more Christian, but then it's easy to understand. Or you can say that some of the demigods, the celestial beings, Tiryang means horizontal, the animals and birds included there. Tiryang, Naradaya. Nara is human beings, and what do you mean by Adaya and all? Why? Because there are four types of beings which are born. What are these? You have Jara, Yuja, all of us, mammalians, born out of womb. And then what do you have? And then you have Jara, Yuja can be human and animal. Then you have Andaja, born out of eggs. And then you have Udvija, all the plant lives. And then you have Swetaja, all the insects and bacteria, they're born out of chemical substances, isn't it? Substances. So he's saying Deva Tiryang Naradayaha. So he's adding up human beings, animals, celestial beings. Adaya means you can include insects, bacteria, birds, and all that, and plants. Te Paragdarshinaha. Parag Pratyak. Pratyak is what is internal, which you. Parag is what is outside of you. What is gross, what is material, what is physical. They paragdarshina, they cannot see inside, they don't see the self. They only see the material reality around them. They are, in philosophical terms, you can say the naturalists, in ethical terms, or the physical, the positivists. What is reality? Whatever can be perceived with the help of senses, observed, that alone is real. What are the rest? It doesn't matter to us. So they are the materialists or the physicalists or the positivists. Paragdarshinaha. They can only see things outside of them. Which means what? They don't know who they are. They don't have Atmakyana. Pratyak Tattva Bodha Vivarjitaha. So they confuse themselves because they see the outside. They would see themselves as human beings, as animals, as birds. I'm X, I'm Y, I'm Z, I want to do this, I want to experience it. They will look at everything in material terms, looking at references outside of them. They have no clue to their swarupa, their essential nature. Therefore, no liberation. Ritegyanam no kaivalyam. They are kind of trapped in this whole samsara essentially because they have no clue to why they are here. Now let's look at the commentaries. Deva Tiryagiti. Idanim Tesham Vishwasangyam Praptanam Jivanam. Of these jivas who are called Vishwasangyam, this is the name. They are categorized as Vishwa because of the domain of existence, which is the physical universe, physical domain of existence. Jivanam Tattva Jnana Rahitatvena. What is the as to why they are here? They don't have Tattva Jnana. They don't know who they are, why they are here. That inner understanding of who they are is missing. Rahitatvena sansara patti prakaram. How do you assume your presence in sansara? Because of your past papa punya. And then one condition as to why we are here is because we don't have Atma Jnana. Because we do not know why we are here. That is why we are here. There are some people, let's imagine, there are some people already in the laboratory doing their research. And there are others who are applying for fellowships. Why? Because they don't know how to get into that laboratory. They have some idea about what's going on inside, but they don't have any entry because they don't have a good PhD proposal. There's no professor to sort of assume their tutelage, their mentorship, and therefore they're struggling to get in. Once you get in, you are doing research. Similarly, once we don't have that Tattva Jnana, we are here in Sansara. Once we have Tattva Jnana, we are doing something else. We are liberated. Jnana Rahita Sansara Patti Prakaram Sadrishtantam Sloka Dvena Aha. This sloka and the next sloka he would explain as to why we are here. Te Paragiti, Te Paragdarshinaha. That is how this sloka begins. Te Devadayaha Paragdarshinaha. Now it's beautiful. You know, it gives us a reason to smile because even the gods or the so-called celestial beings are not liberated. They don't have Atma Jnana. And they are also lingering. They are also jumping from one level of existence to another. So Devadaya means including human beings and celestial beings, Paragdarshinaha, Bahyani eva savdadena pasyanti. They only see what is external. Look at Max Weber. He would define what is a fact. You know, social theory is about facts. He said, what is factual? It has to be external. That is the first filter. It must be observable. It must be external. It's not a psychological thing. It has to be a physical thing. It has to be external. It should be visible to the senses. Physical or non-physical, but it has to be external to who you are. Bahyani eva savdadena pasyanti. All the 5 objects of your 5 senses. Like you have the ears, sound, eyes, teja, whatever is light, or whatever is heat, fire. And then you have this Tvagindriya, the skin, you know, you have Sparshendriya, you have Vayu. And then you have Rasanendriya, you know, all the rasas, you have the Rasanendriya, you touch the taste. And then you have the, finally, ultimately, you have your Ghanendriya, so smell. You taste this whole Prithvi and everything. So he's mentioning Savadadena Pashyanti Natu Pratyag Atmanam. They don't know who they are. They don't see they don't have Atma Jnana. They don't see Pratyag Atma. Paranchi Khyani Vyatranat Swayambhus Tasmad Parang Pasyati Na Antaratman. This is written in the Kathopanishad. Paranchi Khani Vyatranat. You know, our Indriyas have gateways outside. So with your eyes, can you see yourself? With your ears, can you hear what the heart is saying? No. With your skin, the ability to touch, can you touch your heart and feel what it is? No. Of course, you have burning sensation in the belly, or you have gastric, or whatever, you know, you can have some feeling of it in medical terms. But here what we are saying is you cannot see, feel, touch that Atma Tattva, or the essential nature of the self, with your Jnanendriyas God has given us, because these are all oriented outside, including Manas. Manas can connect with all this, but Manas is kind of that intermediate level which when we guide and we purify, we train it, then it can help us take us to the self. It can help us assume what is called Atmakara Vritti or Brahmakara Vritti. Paranchi khani vatranat swayambhu tasmat parang pashyati na antaratman. It can never see the antaratma, the inner self, always looks outside. No. Then there is a question. Tarkikadayaha deha vyatiriktam atmanam jananti. But the Tarkikas, means the Nyaya philosophers, they talk about Jivatma. There is Atma which is different from this physical being. Even Mimamsakas recognize Atma which is different from the physical being. Why should you do Swarga Kama Yajeta? How will you go to Swarga? You recognize that there is a being which is different from the physical frame, right? So they have some understanding of Atma. You're saying, no, but that's not sufficient. They know there is something called Atma, but they don't know the way Upanishads explain it. Therefore, he's saying, no, jananti asankhya, yadyapi atmanang te tatha jananti. They know it in a certain way. Tathapi shruti siddham tattvam na jananti. They don't know the way Upanishads explain what is Atma. Therefore, jananti iti asena uktam ityaha pratyagiti. Pratyaga bodha vivarjitaha. Pratyak tattva bodha vivarjitaha. Unfortunate people, they do not know what is the essential nature of the self, and therefore they have to jump around and move around, and yet without having any access to the real self. That is the sad thing about them. That is what is mentioning. Okay? Now, let's go to the next verse. What happens to them? Two slokas with which will explain our plight, right? Why are we going to be stuck like this all the time? Or there is some way we can ascend to a plane where we know who we are, we have some escape? He's slowly explaining. There is a level at which we do all kinds of karmas, but we remain trapped. And then there is particular way out of this. That also will mention. Kurvate karma bhogaya karma kartum cha bhunjate nadyam kita iva vartat avarta ramasute brajanto janmano janma labhante naiva nivritim. He's speaking of an example to compare us with, which is not very respectful. What is that? Kurvate karma bhogaya. The moment a bird is born, comes out of the egg, after 3-4 days it flies to identify what it can eat. Kurvate karma bhogaya. It wants to survive. Instinct for self-preservation. Human beings, it will study, or if it doesn't get a chance to study, it will do something to survive. Find a partner, have children or not, but have some kind of a relationship. Bhogaya, to experience life. Karma kartum cha bhunjate. And then how do you do work? You have to retain this physical frame, therefore you take some food. You have to consume something to keep itself satiated, to keep it in a survival mode, to extend its existence. And then how? Now this is how our life is, and it's being compared with what? Nadyam kita iva avartat avartantaram asute. Think about a small insect. Okay. Small insect or a big ant or whatever. There is flooding river. Right now, Ganges is in spate. So in the flooding river, this particular insect, maybe some kind of a dragonfly, whatever, it's trapped in the spate of whirlpool of water in the river, which is in spate. Kitaha iva, like the insects which are trapped there, floating on water. Avartat avartantaram. They travel from one whirlpool to another. You have one whirlpool. They survive it. Then they'll get trapped and then they're encircling again. Asute. Brajanto janamano janama. Now take it into our life conditions. You have one stressful situation, one challenge. Class 10, school certificate. You're struggling. Score very high. Okay, now manage a seat in high secondary or high school. Good seat, one particular thing. And then you have this whole set of competitions. You get into medical or engineering, what stream or what college. Another level of competition and fight for survival. Then you have graduation. Again, same problem. Where do you get into which university? What do you do? Then you're looking for a job or you're doing research. And then there's another whirlpool. You have to find a friend in case you get a job. You find a friend to settle a family. Maybe you find one, maybe it breaks down, or maybe it survives. Then you have a child. Then you have to raise the child. So from one whirlpool to another, you're just moving from one stressful situation in life to another challenging situation in life. Brajanto janmano janma lavante naiva nibratim. That is how all of us move from one whirlpool, one challenge in life to another challenge, and we don't get liberated. There is no respite. Ataeva bhogaya kurvate iti, the commentator is explaining. Ataeva bhogaya sukhadi anubhavaya. What do you mean by bhogaya? Sukha dukhadi anubhavaya. In order to experience what life is about, we go through so many experiences, whether it's watching a YouTube video or a news or a cricket match or tennis match. Recently, I had gone to speak to university in a student, and after the talk, one professor said, "I have a small problem. Can you help me resolve it?" I said, "What?" He said, I don't have any bad habits. I'm a professor. I'm all the time studying, but I'm a little obsessed with tennis matches, and I have a very cruel wife. She doesn't let me watch Wimbledon or French Open or US Open. I have a hard time because the moment I switch on the television, she'll do some mischief to switch it off. Or sometimes she'll cut off power. I can't fight because children will think I'm stupid, I'm childish, which is. I said, you should be grateful to your wife because she has figured it out. You have an addiction. She's just trying to save you. Think about it. It's not all the time a big challenge we are having in life to get a job or make money or buy a house or a car. No, it's about fights and constant struggles to deal with small and big problems. Ataiva bhogaya sukhadi anubhavaya. Why does that person want to watch this tennis match? Because he thinks without it, he says, my life is incomplete. I feel a big vacuum if I miss out on a match. Sukhadi anubhavaya manushyadi sarirani adhishtaya. You have these bodies or biological frameworks that you assume, identify with. It could be a human body, it could be an animal or a plant body or a bird body. Adhishtaya karma tat sarira uchitani karmani kurvate. Depending on what kind of body you have, you do activities accordingly. If you have an animal body, you go and hunt and eat. If you're a bird, you fly around. If you're a human being, depending on where you are and what you know, what are your skill sets, what are the opportunities, you will pick up some kind of a survival means. Some way to express your inner creative power and experience life. Karma iti jato ekavachanam. Karma kurute. They do so many activities. Why one ekavachana? He's saying no. Because as a class of things, he's saying karma means class of activities. Punasya karma kartum devadis sarira. Sarires tattat phalam bhunjatecha. So you have different kind of physical bodies you get. And then you do a lot of activities and then you experience the outcomes of those activities. You make some profits in the stock market, you win a match, you complete a project, or you fail. You experience all that. Phalanubhava bhave tattat sajatya ichcha anupapatya. If you don't have any anubhava, you do one thing, you succeed, then only you will like to do it again. Sadatya phala ichcha, you want to experience it again. It could be a sweet dish, it could be a book, it could be a film, it could be a game. You do it once, you experience it, it gives you a good feeling, you want to do it again. It gives you a bad feeling, you avoid it. So tatta sajatya ichha anuvapatya tatta sadhana anusthana anubhapattehe. You will not do these activities. Therefore, God gives you some anubhava, some opportunity for you to experience the outcome so that you repeat it or you do it. Evam vartamanaha te jivaha. This is how they are jumping from one set of activities to another. Vartamanaha te jivaha nadi pravaha patitaha kitaha. They are almost like insects which have fallen into a river in spade. And then what happens to them? Avartat avartantaram, from one whirlpool to another. Asu vrajanto yatha nibriti sukham na lavante. However, they don't get any respite. Is there any liberation? No. You finish one assignment. Then you have a party, right? In the offices, corporate offices. You get a deal, you get a project, you get a very good order. You're very happy. There is one good dinner, and then people are dancing. They're allowed to have a booze party, a bit of drinks and dance and everything, celebration. So you're free? No. You have to deliver. He said, okay, my boys, wonderful that you got it. So who is going to do what? They'll have a business meeting. The celebration, the retreat, slowly ends with an action plan for the next 6 months, next few weeks. And then if you're given an assignment, you are again under pressure. Nibritim sukham na levante evam asu janmanaha janma pradantaha sukham na eva lavante iti. Then they are jumping from one. Okay, so, and then why do you get a good body or a bad body? You have Chandogya Upanishad, the 5th adhyaya, you have the 10th Brahmana and the 7th sloka. Ramaniya charanaha abhyaso gate ramaniyam yonim apadyeran. So if you do good activities, God will give you a good physical to do something good. If you do bad things, God gives a bad frame. That is what is written. And then you go to Swarga Loka maybe, but you have to come back. You can't be there. Once you exhaust your punyas or your good activities, the results thereof, you would be asked to go back. And why does it happen? Because you don't have pratyak atma tattva vivarjitaha. Mrutyoho sam mrutyam gachati ya iha nani eva pashyati. Kathopanishad 2:4-11. The one who is trapped in these dualities here, he'll jump from one death to another, means one life to another. Every birth has a death. Mrutyoho mrutyam gachati. He travels from one death to another, means he travels from one life to another. You don't get amaratva, we don't get liberation, but we jump from one level to another. So there is no end to it. Is there any chance that we have some respite? That is explained in the next one. Evam sansara pattim avidhaya, having explained to us why we jump from one level of existence to another in this sansaranam, this whole whirlpool of existence, tan nibriti upayam darsaitum drishtantam tavadaha. He is now giving an example. How can we actually find a respite? How can we relieve ourselves, liberate ourselves from this whirlpool of existence, jumping from one stressful situation to another? Where is respite? Where do you go? You have a job, you have a bad job, you're angry. You take interviews, you give interviews, you land up another job. Is that freedom? Is that liberation? No, it's again some stress. So where is respite? How do you get out of it? He's explaining, giving a beautiful example in the verse number 31. Satkarma paripakate karuna nidhino dhritaha prapya tirataru chayam vishramyanti yatha sukham. It's referring to those kitaha, those insects which are trapped in the whirlpool of water in a river in spate, a flooding river. Satkarma paripakat. there is fruition of their good past deeds. You are in a bad financial situation. There are debtors knocking at your door. There are people who have given you the loan sharks. They're knocking at your door. You have to return the loan. You have the reminders, credit card companies or other places from where you have made some loans. They're calling you up. You have to make the payment. Otherwise, we're going to trouble you. And suddenly, somebody calls you up and says, "Sir, please visit the bank. You remember you had invested heavily in this particular corporate bond?" "Oh, yes, really? Yeah. So this is matured and it's going to give you 10x profits. You invested X amount, you're going to get 10x. Imagine. Then what happens? You can repay all your loans and still you have a savings of 4x, 6x gone. Still, you have invested X. You are now having 4 or 5x, so you can start a new life. Satkarma paripakate, and suddenly there is fruition, fructification of some past good deeds. And God never forgets either to punish or to reward for our good or bad deeds. Satkarma paripakate jivaha te karuna nidhina udhritaha. These insects, luckily enough, there is some monk who's sitting next to the river and finds this bunch of insects, are troubled. They're getting washed away. Just imagine, maybe it's a cat, maybe it's a dog struggling for existence. Then he throws his napkin, and these small insects climb onto that napkin. Then he pulls that napkin out of this flooding river, and then prapya tira taruchayam, he releases those small insects below the tree, in the tree shade. Vishramyanti yatha sukham. And these small insects, imagine these ants or whatever, just imagine something. They relax. Oh my God. Then they look back into the river. I was there. I've been rescued out of it. Who rescues them? Somebody who is very compassionate. A person picks them up and takes them out. Then they are liberated. In that situation, on their own, they cannot do anything. So what helped them? They are past punya karmas. Satkarma paripakate. Satkarma iti. Te kitaha, those insects. Satkarma paripakat. Because the fructification of their previous punya karmas. Purva uparjita punya karma paripakat. They have earned, they have invested. They have invested, they have purchased some treasury bonds or some kind of corporate bond. They have done some investments, and good investments, safe investments, not risky, not uncertain investments. Punya karma paripakat, kripaluna, by a compassionate, very kripalu means somebody who is very compassionate, empathetic. Kenachit purusha visheshena udhritaha, somebody lifts them, rescues them out of the spitting river. Nadi pravahad vahir nisaritaha. They picked them from the flow, the stream of water, and then they are released on the ground below a tree. Santaha tira chayam prapya, and suddenly they are relaxing. Oh my God. Now they are below a tree. The sun doesn't fall on them. They may be trembling. They may be shaking, right? Shivering because of the cold. If it's Ganges, it's very cold, isn't it? So taruchayam prapya sukham yatha bhavati tatha yad vad vishramyanti. The way they relax. Similarly, now he'll go to the next verse to explain drashtantike, then what happens to the human beings. We have 4 minutes. We can do it. Upadesam abhapyevam acharya tattvadarshinaha panchakosha vivekena labhante nibritim param. Now we are talking about human beings who are trapped in this whirlpool of samsara. What happens to us? Upadesam abhapya evam. This act of lifting is compared to good words of counsel by somebody who is very compassionate. It's not about one of these gurus who is trying to do some business. It says 7-day program, you are liberated. Your kundalini will be lifted. Then You look very young, like a 19-year-old boy or a girl, then you go spend a few $1,000s. Not that kind of a guru. He's saying what? Upadesam abhapya evam acharyat. Who is that guy? He's not one of the occult gurus. He's an acharya. The moment the acharya word comes, this guy is not an inventionist who is trying to imagine things and tell you, I know this is what is true. No. This is what the Shastras say. He's an acharya. He's linking you with the source of wisdom, with the Upanishads. Acharya, and what kind of a person? What kind of acharya? Tattva darshinaha. He is a tattva darshi. He knows the essential meaning of the Shastras. And then he is going to tell you that that is the act of rescue. That is the best rescue act that we can imagine of. Upadesam abhapya evam acharya tattva darshinaha. What is the way forward? What kind of upadesha? First, he tells you you're unnecessarily worried about your mental imagination, your imaginary fears. End